Ukraine funds to backfill U.S. stocks will expire amid GOP opposition. Defense news. House GOP opposition to additional Ukraine aid threatens to deprive the Pentagon of funds it needs to backfill weapons it has given Kyiv from U.S. stocks. Below are your comments. The West needs to backfill munitions and hardware to drive the Kremlin off Ukraine territory. People of the U.S. see clearly Kremlin sympathizers in elected office moving to help the enemy. There could be pushback. The ONL, MAGA and other hardline Republicans no longer support democracy at any level. Here at home they stick to Trump's lies about election fraud and are pushing to make it harder to vote. President Zelensky wouldn't bow to Trump's rule and open an investigation into Hunter Biden, and now they are innocent people will die if you can help save lives, and don't you bear any responsibility. Next news. House overwhelmingly approves Ukraine aid. The Hill. The House late Thursday night overwhelmingly approved $300 million in new aid to Ukraine. The 311 to 117 vote came after House GOP leaders on Wednesday stripped the Ukraine assistance from a Pentagon funding bill. All no votes came from Republicans. Though it drew broad support, the funding has been a source of controversy for the past. Below are your comments. Maybe there is still hope for this country. You wouldn't think supporting democracy's battle over a dictator would need any debate in America. But it does now. They could have done this weeks ago. Now pass the spending bill since there's no excuse anymore. Only peace talks will end the destruction in Ukraine. Absolutely none of the aid we have sent them so far has had any effect. In other news, national parks, and those who count on them, brace for possible shutdown. Ultra-extreme MAGAs already in a rage over today's impeachment inquiry flop. Next news. Rand Paul. Withdraw Ukraine money if you want to avoid shutdown. The Hill. Rand Paul, RKY, reiterated his threat Thursday to hold up a Senate government funding bill because it includes more than $6 billion in funding for Ukraine. Paul wrote on X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, that he would only allow a vote on the spending stopgap before the Sept. 30 deadline. Below are your comments. Could they put some of this money in SS to help save it? Thought the Speaker of the House came to an agreement with President Biden over spending. Does Rand Paul have a summer home on the outskirts of Moscow? He sure does kowtow to Putin. Why are other Republican senators silent? Do they fear Putin or their base? Senator Paul has been physician in his past life. A very noble profession that I would strongly recommend he returns back to. In his life he did not learn anything that the history has been offering to teach. In order to have Mr. Paul immediately understand what is at stake with the Soviet agra. Next news. House advances Ukraine aid after leaders strip money from defense spending bill. The Hill. The House advanced legislation Thursday that provides $300 million in aid to Ukraine after GOP lead RS stripped the funding from a defense spending bill amid opposition from Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, GOP. The chamber voted 217 to 211 to adopt the rule, which governs debate on legislation. For the 5-page bill, kicking off debate in the below are your comments. Best money ever spent by the Defense Department. We've more than decimated a rival's army, for about 2 months of the Defense Department's annual budget. In addition, we've strengthened the NATO alliance, and put a little more caution into China's, North Korea's and Iran's militaries, without send. Keep the pressure on Russia. The Chinese are watching closely. They haven't had much to say lately about the countries they want to invade. If or when Ukraine wins, the Chinese will see that Taiwan is not such a good prize. We agreed to help defend them and China sees we will do it. They do not want. That just cuts American jobs. We buy those military products from U.S. manufacturers. They employ Americans. All foreign aid is in the form of a voucher. It can only be used with U.S. producers. From 155 mm shells to corn. It's spent here. It employs Americans. The biggest fear is we cut Ukraine when Putin starts war here, and he will, the House of Representatives will be the first one in the bunker. Ukraine is an emergent democracy that is being invaded because it started to cultivate a close relationship with us. As an American, I find it offensive that the Russians think they can attack friends of ours with impunity. As a taxpayer, I'm willing to continue backing Ukraine for however long is. Next news. Chief of UK Defence Staff. Strikes on Russian Black Sea Fleet prove that Ukraine holds initiative. Ukrainska Pravda. UK Chief of Defence Staff, Admiral Tony Radakin, who is on a visit to Kyiv, said that strikes on the Russian Black Sea Fleet are an example of how Ukraine is holding the initiative. Source: Radio Liberty. Quote, "We discussed the new military assistance commitments made in Ramstein last week that will help strengthen GTHEN and sustain Ukraine's resilience through the winter and beyond." Below are your comments. Sure, just be prepared for the consequences. This is not a one-way street. One day Brits will reap benefits for all this effort against Russians and they won't like it. And when the karma answers, it will be justified. Brits are too weak to do anything alone and are incapable with their measly army, but they jump at an opportunity to be someone's sidekick. This has been T. It's over. 400K soldiers bleep. 14M fled the country and will not return. Desperation by NATO to missile Crimea. Odessa was crushed and will be taken next. Smoke that Mi-6. Is there a video of an actual fleet getting hit? All I saw was a building getting hit. Next news. The Hill, Republicans remove Ukraine funding from U.S. defense spending bill. Kyiv Independent. The House Rules Committee convened at night on Sept. 27 to remove the funding for the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative from the defense spending package and instead had it stand as a separate bill, the outlet said. Below are your comments. Putin has just been biding his time. When Ukraine is defeated, he knows he can do whatever he wants. A people who forgets history is doomed to repeat it. How about we support Ukraine and everyone else outside the U.S.? After we balance the federal budget, we shouldn't be borrowing money to give to other countries. Balance the budget. If Russia wins the war, Ukraine won't be the only loser. Putin will invade more countries. The Republicans who are morally opposed to supporting Ukraine are siding with the enemy. These proposals are going nowhere. The American public are against any more aid to Ukraine. Our debt is strangling our economy and everyone has to deal with inflation from rent to groceries to the gas station. Next news. We are working to make progress in terms of NATO membership, Zelensky. Ukrainska Pravda. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky has revealed the details of his talks with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Source. Zelensky's evening address on 28 September quote, Ukraine deserves to become a member of NATO, and it will. Below are your comments. Z has a Middle Eastern approach to problem resolutions. It is a great deal different from European models. He is not picking up on their subtleties. C. He is headstrong in wanting confrontation and war. Sorry Zelensky, you are doomed. No NATO membership for you. Ukraine will be wrecked. Ukraine does not deserve to become a member of NATO. Zelensky is working to hand this war off to NATO. He wants U.S. boots on the ground. Next news. Ending Ukraine aid would be devastating to its war effort, nominee for top Pentagon post warns. Military.com. Derek Chollet's testimony on Capitol Hill comes as there appears to be no clear path in Congress to approving more aid for Ukraine. Below are your comments. We have a chance to set back Russia military and economy with just financial support and equipment. The best way to win a war. Pro-Putin Republicans are blackmailing their own country. Worse, they take money away from an innocent country's defense of its children and families. Remember this next time you vote. Next news. Pentagon can give $5 billion worth of weapons to Ukraine, but there is not enough money to replace T. Hem yet. Ukrainska Pravda. Mike McCord, who is responsible for the financial reporting in the U.S. Department of Defense, has sighed that the Pentagon has $5 billion United States dollars worth of weapons for Ukraine by the end of the year, but only US $1. Below are your comments. U.S. spends nearly $1 trillion a year on the military, plus there are other sources of money available. Meanwhile, pro-Putin Republicans are blackmailing their own country. Worse, they take military aid out of that funding bill that would defend innocent children and families from a brutal uncalled-for Russian invasion. Remember this next time you vote. Most of what we've given Ukraine has been stuff that we've had mothballed. Next news. NATO chief visits Kyiv, says Ukraine troops gradually gaining ground. The Hill. In a visit to Kyiv on Thursday, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said Ukraine is gradually gaining ground in its counteroffensive against Russia. Ukrainians are fighting for their families, their future, their freedom. Moscow is fighting for imperial delusions, Stoltenberg said Thursday. Meanwhile, Russia is diminished on the world stage, cut off from international markets, staying home. From below are your comments. Ukraine is being slaughtered. They are focused on 10 miles of the 600-mile front. And they cannot even hold that. I have a feeling that Russia is about to destroy Ukraine infrastructure. Something they have held off on. Ukraine will be dark, cold, no phone, no water, no rail. And that will end it. NATO should have disbanded with the USSR in the 90s. NATO is an undemocratic institution pushing perpetual war for arms sales profits. This quagmire ends in loss of American support or negotiations. Next news. Republicans' own witnesses say there's not enough evidence to impeach Joe Biden. HuffPost. The first GOP-led impeachment hearing revisited the debunked 2019 allegation that Biden corrupted U.S. foreign policy toward Ukraine. Below are your comments. The Republicans' evidence is Hunter Biden text people about his dad. Still not $1 has been uncovered to go to Joe Biden. Even if they were to uncover money, everything they are talking about is when he was not in office. Trump made money before, during, and currently from Russia, China, and Sao. Imagine that, being upstaged by your own witnesses. Cancel this game show, show me the facts, and get back to the budget shutdown threats. Next news. Republicans strip $300 million United States dollars for Ukraine from defense spending bill in Congress but will concede it later. Ukrainska Pravda. Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives have decided to strip $300 million United States dollars of financial aid for Ukraine from the defense spending bill and consider these funds in a separate bill. Source: European Pravda with reference to the Hill details. The House Rules Committee convened a last-minute meeting to remove the funding for the Ukraine Secure ITY Assistance Initiative, which is intended for training Ukrainian soldiers and purchasing weapons. From the Department of Defense Appropriations by. Below are your comments. So far, the U.S. has given over $76 billion in aid to the Ukraine since the war started. There are currently 12 million children who go hungry daily in the U.S. This could feed all of them at about $18 a day for a year. Why go back to the money for Ukraine later? Just stop the money from going. That's right, comrades. Finally allocate the money for building the wall between the USA and Mexico. Make it 100 feet high. Great song. Instead of Devo's whip it, strip it good! Exclamation mark. Next news. Ukraine recap. Stoltenberg visits, Zelensky urges air defense. Bloomberg. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg made a surprise visit to Kyiv, where he met President Volodymyr Zelensky and discussed ways for alliance members to supply additional air defense systems to Ukraine. Zelensky reiterated that NATO membership for Ukraine is only a matter of time. Most read from below. Pakistan rupee set to become top-performing currency globally. Biden impeachment hearing heavy on politics, light on substance. UAW aims for at least 30% wage bump to woo new. Below are your comments. Membership in an alliance should be wholehearted and defense of its territories should be full throw. TT-led. Less than that is ineffective alliance and cannot stand against any enemy, domestic or foreign. The U.S. has pumped more than $25 billion into Ukraine for non-defense purposes. It is insane. Ukrainian air defense shot down 33 out of 44 Shahed drones. Earlier on they were reporting 100% of all drones and missiles destroyed. Now, recently that figure is changing. Next news. House narrowly clears hard right Pentagon funding bill after Ukraine aid carve-out. Politico. The House also approved the separate $300 million tranche of Ukraine funding after Republicans remove edit from the defense bill. Below are your comments. How about stripping Shell, Exxon, BP aid? That comes to nearly 1/8 of the whole budget. There is no single larger item. Just read an article about Ukrainians collaborating in the Russian-occupied areas. In the U.S., the collaborators would be from the ranks of Republicans. They're corrupt, cannot grasp the concept of democracy and will not care for anybody but themselves. Next news. 89% of young people see a bright future in Ukraine. Ukrainska Pravda. Sociologists have established that 89% of young people surveyed aged 16 to 35 who live in Ukraine are hopeful about its future. 81% of young people of the same age who have moved to Poland think the same thing. Below are your comments. Pure propaganda. If give a chance, most of them would leave in a heartbeat. They just don't have tea. He means to do it. It's as if they don't know or don't care about there being an invasion. Yup, they have corrupt parents in high government positions lol. I'd like to see the same survey taken in Russia. Right, Pravda. The young Ukrainians also believe the moon is made out of cheese and honey. Happy now? Next news. Ukrainian commander-in-chief asks UK Chief of Defense Staff to help strengthen Ukraine's air defense. Ukrainska Pravda. Valery Zaluzhny, commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, has met with Admiral Tony Radakin, chief of the defense staff of the UK, to discuss the Ukrainian counter-offensive and the needs of Ukrainian troops. Below are your comments. And the Brits will probably give some help and advice. They have been pretty good so far. Just proves the USA is not footing everything here. Remember, it was Britain that sent Storm Shadow missiles, which have been very effective. Sorry, Conservatives will be sitting out the next wars. No member of my family is a citizen. Good luck, brave Ukrainian people. Next news. Germany and Israel sign an agreement for Berlin to buy a U.S.-Israeli missile defense system. Associate Ed Press. Germany and Israel on Thursday signed an agreement for Berlin to buy the sophisticated Arrow 3 missile defense system, designed to intercept long-range ballistic missiles. The development is the latest step in Berlin's bid to strengthen its air defenses following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Germany aims to integrate the system into wider NATO air defense efforts. Below are your comments. Long declared to be America's greatest spy problem by our intelligence agency, this system is most probably built on stolen technology from America defense industries. Time really does heal. Good steps in the right direction. Arrow, built by Americans with American tax dollars, sold by Israel at an astronomical profit. Next news. Putin creates day of reunification of occupied Ukraine. Ukrainska Pravda. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a law establishing the 30th of September as the day of reunification of the 4 Ukrainian oblasts, Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia oblasts, with Russia. Below are your comments. How nice of him to do that. That's like Italy saying that because they conquered half of the known world 2,000 years ago, that territory should be theirs by right. This is just another ploy to play the victim. This is Russian land and Western arms are helping Ukraine invade Russia. Japan should just say, the Kuril Islands are now ours. And see what they do. I just signed that Russia is now part of Wisconsin. You have been bombing these areas and bleep your own people. Real smart Putin. Get out of Ukraine, and let all the people live in peace. I wouldn't be marching in the street on that day if I lived in one of those areas. Next news. External sources of funds for Ukraine are dwindling, but we will find solutions, Ukraine's finance minister. Ukrainska Pravda. The difficulties of sourcing external financing for the state budget are growing every month, and UK Rain will be not just asking for support but demanding it. Source: Serhiy Marchenko, Ukraine's Minister of Finance, on the National Joint 24/7 newscast, reported by Interfax Ukraine. Quote, "There are fewer and fewer allies, ed." Below are your comments. There are no solutions. The U.S. has sent over $135 billion to Ukraine expecting a dramatic breakthrough in the war, but here is none. Ukraine is being misled by Zelensky and powerful U.S. leaders to continue to fight to the last man. The Ukrainians are like our Native Americans once were. Struggling. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you like it, please thumbs up.